for me, I think Dundalk are just a complete mess at the moment, on and off the pitch. The Keegan Giovagnoli situation is just an absolute mess.
It was my biggest takeaway from the game, how strange the Keegan Giovagnoli thing is. Like, we were sitting up at the back of the stand, and the Dundalk substitutes, Gartland as well, were kind of just in front of us, and Giovagnoli sat within them, about like 10 seats from the barrier, and then there's a big drop down to the bench. And at the first half, he shouted and moaned and got up a few times, but he was fairly calm and just sat in a seat. I think he had a notepad and a laptop. And then during the second half, as the minutes went on, he just kept edging closer and closer to the gate. And by the end of the game, where Bowes kind of had to shut up shop, and rightly so, any ball Dundalk put in, they answered really confidently, cleared it. Giovagnoli was just shouting at his Italian assistant and shouting at Keegan for the whole game. Like, I couldn't really hear exactly what it was, whether it's like press or put a player on or make a change. Oh yeah, it's just so strange, Ross. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it. Like, totally kind of dysfunctional. I don't know why he's there, to be honest.
And in the first half, it was a lot of Giovagnoli just like kind of screaming press and screaming a lot of that stuff from the stands in the first half mainly. By the end of it, he was down to touch on himself. But in the first half, he was holding this like I don't know what it was, like a manual or something like that. Like, it was like it looked like tactics or something. Or I don't know what it was. It looked like a book or like a spreadsheet or something. And I was like trying to zoom in on my phone, just trying to see what it was. Like,
do you ever see those ones where it's like score? It's just like it's like the net and it's like score.
Yeah, he's gonna take a picture and then change like football for dummies or something.
Shocking.
And I think Dan McDonald was sitting behind us, and he put a picture on Twitter, saying, like, kind of questioning the situation, because he's questioned it a few times this season now about how strange it is, and people are accusing him of having like an anti-Dundalk agenda, but I don't think it's anything to do with that. It's such a strange setup there.
It's like, if Keegan's trying to focus on the game and try to work out how he's going to get an equaliser, like, the last thing he needs is some like fella shouting at him from 20 yards away. And once the fans come back to the stadium, he's not gonna. What does he do then? Like, fucking text him? Like, yeah, it's weird.
There's absolutely no way that Shane Keegan is the main man there.
No, not a chance. Not a chance, man.
His resume is he got relegated with Wexford Youths and got relegated with Galway, and that's it. There's no way he's the main man there.
Chance.
It's a complete.
Well, that's it. That's it. Giovagnoli's resume is summer camps in New York. So I mean, like,
yeah, but he's in charge last season, so you can maybe add to that he was
last season
group stage
well,
and won the FAI Cup as well, maybe, because he was in charge last year.
Yeah,
so you can maybe, and like Shane, like, there's no way Shane.
There's not a chance. There's not a chance Shane Keegan's in charge. No, not a hope.
It's a complete cover up. Like,
yeah, I think I read there Dundalk's worst ever start to a league campaign. They looked a shadow of a team on Friday night. Ross put it best. They looked like a load of individuals thrown together. Bowes looked like a coherent team. Savage win for Bowes, but Jesus, where do Dundalk go now?
That's the question. That's the question in everyone's mind, I think. And the next game is against St. Pat, so it doesn't get any easier for him. Interesting to see, because John Gill kind of screenshotted a Dan McDonald. I'm not sure if you saw this. I'll read it out, but Dan McDonald had tweeted out that Dundalk had lost their way under previous management. It's a bit of a dig, like, because he says that's because when the chairman was given influence, there's no coming back. There was no coming back under Vinnie Pert, and a strong manager is needed now to put outside influences back in the box. And John Gill, who was the first team coach when Vinnie Pert was in charge, even replied to that saying, "Poor tweet. Was it broken after the defeat in Sligo, 13 points behind the leaders, or was it broken in 2017, I think, under Kenny, when they're at the club of 17 points behind Cork? Every team and group has ups and downs," which is an interesting point. Dan McDonald replied saying, "You can tag me, John, if you want to reply. I stand over what I said there. Sure, Vinnie Pert was previously said he was ready to quit over everything that was going on around the Champions League game that they had. So it wasn't like a normal down." John replied, "Daniel, you wrote an article just after the previous manager left, which in my view was in poor taste. You checked facts with a couple of disgruntled individuals without giving anyone a right of reply before you published." Dan replied, "John, it's clear from your message that you've been given a certain version of the truth about who I spoke to for that piece. I know where that theory comes from, and you know I won't be able to say who I spoke to, but it's not the version you have been spun. I can 100% assure you that. everyone, and he continues on with a different tweet, everyone tries to present themselves in the best possible light. But as I say, I stand over the tweet and what was written before, but do not want to get into a slanging match because I know you do have a genuine feel for the club. And there's a lot of upset over what's happened. And then John Gill replied, I'm upset over your assertion that the previous management group was weak. I was part of that group. If people were weak, some of us would be still there now. And that is a fact. That's an interesting one. Like, some of us would be there now if we were weak. I found it was interesting. Dan McDonald replied, the last thing on it, you know, there are layers to that point. Your initial tweet referenced a previous manager who would never have accepted any interference. Yes, he never had to deal with it either, but that is the point I was making. Boundaries were naively crossed, as you well know. So yeah, it's the whole club is like in turmoil. Obviously, John Gill and Vinny Perth let go last season, and I think Dundalk fans would have given them more time. They had only just won the league, obviously were on a bit of a downward spiral at the time. But I think, as he says, every group does have its ups and downs. But I think, Dundalk just seems like a complete mess, doesn't it?
I think it's interesting because you just touched on Dan McDonald obviously questioning a lot of what's going on behind the scenes at Dundalk, with Filippo and Shane Keegan and stuff, and then getting into kind of Twitter spat with the ex-managers. Like, you can kind of see why people would think that he has a bit of a Dundalk agenda against him. Like, not saying that he does, by the way, but like that's just that's how people might perceive him.
I think it's interesting. Like, nearly every week he does, like, Dan McDonald puts a picture up or says something about Dundalk nearly every week. Like,
it's interesting. I do think that a very interesting comment saying we'd still be there if they weren't weak, as in people left based. I presume what he means by that is that people left after Vinny Perth got sacked. That people left in tandem with him. Which would like imply that they're strong-willed and not weak. So that's an interesting comment. I don't know. I like, obviously, going back to Vinny Perth, I do think that the sacking at the time was a bit harsh. It did work out for them in the end. Did very well in Europa League.
Short term, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. It was a short-term fix. Like, I remember, like, the appointment was big question when it happened. But as you said, I think Dundalk fans, there was definitely a bit of when it happened, there was definitely like big questions being asked, and Vinny Perth did a lot for Dundalk, like, so I can see why John Gill would be pretty upset in the way that they were treated and forced out the door. So it's an interesting one. Like,
Dan put up a good tweet during the match. Said, I know some people are sick of us talking about the Dundalk management charade, but it's hard not to be drawn to the amount of energy they're expending with it all. Filippo is getting steadily closer to the sideline ahead of the latest treble substitution. Messages going back and forth. I'm not sure if you can just see this, but like, Filippo's in the bottom right, crouched down.
Yeah.
Look at
hanging over the barrier. Like, that's mental, isn't it? Like,
crazy.
And then the next tweet up was full time. Dundalk's on the field operation now looking as coherent as off the field. That catches up to you eventually. So
yeah, interesting.
Dan's not impressed.
Vinny said on off the ball last year that he respects Dan McDonald, but his reports on Dundalk under Vinny / John Gilbert are inaccurate and not true, which is very interesting. And as I say, I've only have limited interactions with Vinny Perth, but like, they've all been very, very positive, and I don't think he'd lie about anything like that and come out after the fact and say that as well on off the ball. So I think we've kind of touched on that there, and I think we'll move on from it. But it is very interesting to look back at that and see, because I think Dan McDonald might have got kind of both sides of the story potentially for what he was publishing.